Um, so basically, this is our second video in the series of learning to build Java applications. So, and in this particular video, we are going to be looking at object-oriented programming. We are going to be looking at some of the keywords that are often used in the context of object-oriented programming. So, to get started, I'm going to explain some of those keywords, and then some of the other ones I'm going to explain them after using some specific when we get to so when we start doing some of our examples, and then I see that there is need for us to learn this. So I expect that we would at some point need to explain what a parameter is. At some point we would need to also explain what an access modifier is. So to get straight into some of these theoretical stuffs, so to get started, when we talk of object oriented, it means is object concentric. It revolves around objects. Okay, and then when we talk of objects, objects are just a representation of real life entities, but using code. Okay, so for example, using a very important aspect of our lives is our banks. Okay, you go to a bank, you create an account, and so on like that. So your own personal account is an object of a general accounting class. Okay, so that's basically how it works. So object-oriented programming is a programming method, a programming style, a programming paradigm that involves organizing your code around the concept of objects. Okay, you are just well, there have been procedural methods of writing code, but in this case, we are looking at just object-oriented programming. So I also added that objects are often built around real-life concepts. Okay, so the way this guy works is that there is a sort of a blueprint, right? Okay, I'm going to use some real life examples here. So there is a sort of blueprint that these objects actually follow. So ideally, now look at the bank accounts we create. So all bank accounts have certain attributes. They have an account name, they have an account balance. They also have a list of other information that every bank needs to collect. They need to know your address, they need to know your next of kin. So all of these are attributes that every single one of us share in our bank accounts. Okay, so we have our own copies of all of this. We have so each of us now that creates an account. It's like each of us we are having an object of an account. Okay, so that's the way it works. So once you create an account, you are just instantiating, you are creating a new object of an accounting blueprint or a banking framework that already exists. So this is basically what we are going to be doing here. So first of all, we are going to create a blueprint, and then from that blueprint, users can now be able to uh, create a new accounting application. And that's what we are going to be doing here. We are going to build an accounting application. So we are going to start from the scratch, and then we start learning new concepts, and then we use the newly learned concepts to build this application. So one of the keywords that are used when it comes to object-oriented programming is the concept of class. Okay, if we look at from a school setting, for example, so when you have a class, so that class actually consists of a number of things, right? There are students in the class, there are furnitures in the class, there's a teacher in the class, you have your bags, your materials in the class, and so on like that. So from that you can see that the class is like a physical structure that contains a number of elements that are specific to a particular set of people. So whoever is not in that class is not a part of that class. So by deal, you can see that a school has several classes, right? So all of those classes are similar in the sense that they contain similar attributes, but the attributes they contain are actually different for each class. So you could have a class where the children in that class, probably the youngest is around five, you have five. Then in that class you could have children age 5 to 6 in that class, and then you go to another class, children are older and so on like that. So the same way here, so ideally you can see that there is a blueprint, right? So when the school is creating a new class, it just follows that blueprint to set up a new class. So that is why every single class, you find them, they have their own students, they have their own copies of furniture, they have their own copies of writing materials or text materials, they have their own copies of teachers as well. So in this case as well, a class is there are two different definitions I would give it here. So you can say a class, a Java class, or most a class in programming is a blueprint that will be followed in building uh, objects or in instantiating objects. Okay, instantiating here is the process of creating a new object of a class. So by creating a new object, you can compare that to building a new class in school. So it will have the same attributes of all the other classes as well, only that it will be a specific copy to cater for that particular need. So another definition here is that I said a class, I wrote here that it contains all of our code. Okay, just like a class contains all the students and everything that's specific to that class. So a class is something that would contain all our code, every single dot, every single comma, every single semicolon will be contained in that class. So and the contents of that class can be reused in other portions of the application. So we're also going to be doing that as well. We'll have two different classes and they will be using the elements of those classes in each other. Okay, so now I've made mention of a class containing its own attributes, right? So this is where the concept of instance variables come in. So instance variables generally they are the attributes of the class. Okay, so like if you look at a bank account now, every single bank account has an account name, right? Every single bank account has would have a gender of the holder of that account, would likely have a date of birth of the holder of that account. So all of these are variables of that particular class. Okay, so one point to take note of about with instance variables is that they are available to all members of that class. Okay, all members of that class. Another point to take note of is that when you create an object of that class, that object has its own copy of the instance variables of that class. So like I mentioned in the bank account case, an example of an instance variable would be your account name. So every account that is created will have its own copy of account name. Every account that is created will have its own copy of a date of birth. Okay, so basically this is how the concept of instantiating instance variables are. Okay, so another point to take note of is methods. Okay, so methods are used for specifying the behavior of a class. Okay, so a typical behavior in the class. Okay, we'll be taking a look at methods very soon. So to dive straight into some coding now. So I've created a package here. I named it OOP. You can create a package, name it anything you like. So in this case, I'm going to create a class and name it account. Okay. Okay, so all the contents of this class will be within these braces. So this is a class. So every single part of our code will be inside this class. So now, just like I said, so we are trying to mimic a real world account, right? So like I said, the first thing you would want to set up here are your instance variables. And for the sake of this example, we are going to start with just one instance variable. So I would call it an account name. So account name would be of type string, okay? And then I'll just give it the variable name, account name. Good. So we get started with this. Okay, so another point to get started now with the next thing we'd want to do is to create a method, right? So this method now will enable us to create an account name, right? Okay, it will enable us to create an account name, and then I would also need another method that would also uh, return or fetch the account name of a person who has created an account. So so to do that, the first thing I need to create to is to create is to enter the visibility type or the access modifier public. We are going to take a deeper dive into that as time goes by. So I'll call, then the next thing is the return type. Okay, the return type in this case is going to be void because I only want to use this method to create an account name. So I don't expect it to return any message or any value. So it's just void. Okay, so I'll call it set account name. Okay, so which account name am I going to set? I'm going to call this, going to pass in a parameter here. So I would call it name. But since I'm performing a miracle right here, right? So now, why is there a need for this? So this is basically called a method parameter, right? Now, one thing to take note of here is that this variable name here is only visible inside this method. You can only use it inside this method. If you come outside this method and then try to type name, you can see that you have an error. It's not visible outside of that method. So this is what is called a local variable. It is local to just this method, and only this method can use it. So unlike this instance variable here, it is a global variable because you can use it anywhere in this class. So if I come in here and type account name, it works. Okay, you can see that it works. So it works. So because it's visible inside everywhere inside this class. Now, so I've made mention of this parameter. Why do I need a parameter? So let's use a car as an example, right? So when you want your car to accelerate, you place your foot on the accelerator and then it continues to move, it continues to move. But how fast do you want it to move? So the this is where you provide, you would want to go 60 kilometer an hour, you could want to go 80 kilometer an hour, and then so on like that. So this 80 kilometer here now is an argument, it's a parameter now, right? So it's a way of specifying what you want that method to do. So like in the case of the car, the accelerator is like a method that makes the car go faster. But how fast should it go? This is where the concept of a parameter comes in. Okay, so here now we are saying I want this method to set a user's name, but which name should the user set? So I'm going to use this parameter to collect the particular name of the user. So the same way you are giving a form, right? You are giving a form in the back and you're writing your name. So this is basically what we are trying to do here. And we are using a parameter to do that, right? Okay. So once I do this, the next thing is that I want whatever the user sends in as an argument to this parameter. So the argument to the parameter is the value that the user passes in when accessing that method, right? So in this case, if the user enters Musa, so Musa is the argument to this name parameter or this name variable. Okay, so in this case, I want whatever name the user passes in I want to store it inside this instance variable so that whenever this account is instantiated now, I would instantiate it with the customer's name. Okay, so to do that, I would just use this keyword. This keyword, maybe you can skip it, but then I try to do that. So it's often used inside methods like this to call or to access the instance variables. So at times, people use the same value, the same variable name here, is used here. So what would now differentiate between both is this keyword. So this keyword there will refer to account name here. And if I happen to change this to account name, so equals account name. So you get now that the account name that has this appended to it is referring to the instance variable. The account name that doesn't have this appended to it is referring to your parameter here, right? Okay, so but to okay, I'll maintain this. I'll maintain this for now. So another thing I would like to do here is I want to provide a method that will display certain information about this account. So I'll do public, this time is going to return a result, right? So I would say public string uh, display message, right? Okay. So yeah, I want my message to be string equals account name is congratulations. Okay, you have successfully created an account. Your account name is, I'll just concatenate account name. Good. So what I would do is since I specify that I need this return value here is a string. So what it implies is that this method must contain the return keyword. It must contain the return keyword. So I'll just type in return and then, oh, sorry, I only type string. I didn't put a variable name. So I'll just say message as my variable name. Okay, so I'll just return message. So I think that's good. So I'm creating so the moment, so you would see how this is going to be used later on. So I hope this is okay. There's one more thing I would like to do. This is not good programming practice. So I would like to create another method. It's what it will do is just, this is setting the account name, right? So I also need a getter method now to call as another programming term. I need a getter method now that will just get the account name that has been created, and then I would return. I would then pass that method into display message method here. So let's try that. So I would say public, which is the modifier type here, public string uh, get account name. Okay. So here I'll just say return. So I'm returning a string, right? What am I returning? I'm returning account name. So I would just say return this dot account name. Okay, so now that I have a method that returns account name, so in this place I would not use account name, I would just use this method, and the method name is get account name. So I think we are good to go now. Okay, so now what I'm going to, like I mentioned there, one of the advantages of object-oriented programming is that it allows code reuse. Okay, you set up some code like this, and then you can use it in several other places. So even if 1 million people want to create an account, you just continue to reuse this contents of code here. So I would come in here and then create a test method that would be able to uh, perform actions on the methods of this class. So you notice one thing, this class here does not contain a main method. So as a result, you can't execute it. Okay? It does not contain a main method, so you cannot run it. So you need to provide another class that would contain a main method, and then you'll be able to run it from there. So I would just call it account tests. Okay? So having done this now, the next thing I want to do is PSVM. Or let me type it out. Public static void main string. Okay, so I have the main method now. So having created this main method, don't forget what I want to do is I need to execute some of the methods in this code, right? So before I can have access to this, I need to create an object of that class. And this is where object-oriented programming, I think the journey begins. Okay, you'll be doing this several times later on in your career as a software developer. So how do I create an object of a class? So it's similar to creating a variable, right? So you create the data type, something like double. You create the variable name, let's say age, let's say sum, okay? And then you provide the value here. So in this case now, our, let me comment this out since we'll be using this as a guide, okay? So the data type here is going to be an account. It means the classes we create can also be a data type. Okay, so I'll use account inside the package OOP, right, as my data type. Call it account one. This is the first account I'm creating with it, and then say new account. Okay, so with this now, you can see that we've been able to create an account. We've been able to create an object. We've been able to create the object of an account. So now with this variable now, I can now have access to the members of this account class. So if I come in here now and then I say, how do I do that? Type account one, the dot. So you can see that account name, which is an instance variable inside account, is now available to be used if you want to use it. There is also those methods, get account name, set account name, display message. They are also available to use from that method, right? So this is what instantiating, creating an object of the class does. So now to do that, now I could just say, okay, let's say, so when you create an object like this, the instance variables in your main the instance variables in this class are initialized to null, that is 0. So if I run this now, which is a string, and I try to do something like account one dot display message. Don't forget that display message here is just going to return this message here. Okay. Or before calling that, let me just call get account. Okay. So if I run this now, so you see that it returns null. So it means that by default, when you create an object, the instance variables of the class the object is created from are initialized to null. Okay. Now, so what can we do in this case? If I want to give, I need that capability to be able to provide values for my objects on the fly. That is, as I'm creating them, I want to provide a value directly. So this is where the concept of a constructors come in. Okay. So let me come back here. So constructors. So what are constructors? So constructor is it's a block of code that is used to initialize an object. Okay, so it means that by default, every new class you create has a default constructor that initializes everything in that class to null. So now I want to say I need to create a constructor, right? How do I create a constructor? This is not hard. So ideally, the constructor is placed. You can place it anywhere, but it's good coding practice to place it after your instance variables. So the constructor has the public keyword, and then the name of the class will be added. Public account. All right. So and then inside here, you just you have this as well, just like you have it here. You have this your instance variable as a parameter. Okay. String, it could be name, it could be anything, but it is also good practice to maintain that same account name, right? Okay. So this account name, just like this, is a parameter, right? So it means whenever this account object is being whenever you create this account object, you want to be able to pass in an argument to this parameter. So once to do this now, what I'll just do is this dot, which is this one here, account name equals account name. The second account name is referring to this guy here. The first one here is referring to this. So what I'm doing here is that whatever value I pass in while initializing this an object while initializing an object of this class. So I want that value to be passed into this instance variable, right? Okay, so I will just come here. You can see that I have an error now. It's telling me that remove first argument from constructor account. So it says expected one argument but found zero. So it means I have to provide an argument here. And the argument to be provided is what? A string that would represent the account name. So in this case, I would just simply provide my name, Ajibade Musa. Okay, so if you come back here now, this time around, I've provided an account name here. So if I run this and then let us see, so it says that it provides my account name, Ajibade Musa. So with this now, it means able to initialize. I've been able to initialize this. Okay. So another thing I want to look at here is how about if you call that display message method dot display message. So if I run this now, let's see what we get. So you see that it's able to realize that I've successfully created an account. The account name is Ajibade. So I hope you get how this works. So if another customer comes in now, for example, it creates. So what happens here is that it does this. You create another object like this, and then new account, and then let's say, for example, you say, um, okay, John Terry, former captain of Chelsea. So you pass this in here. So if I now call this guy here, I could just say account two dot display message. So if I run this now, okay, so what I get here is, so you can see now that all the different objects have their own copies of all the methods in the account class, right? They have their own copies of these methods here. So it's exactly what happens. There's an account class when you go to a bank. So once your records are or your details are entered in there, so it just instantiates that particular class, and then and on and on and on for as many customers that want to do that. Okay, so so we have gone quite some way here. So I think we would give it a pause here for now, and then tomorrow I will be continuing with this particular example. So we need to look at okay, how about we can as we have seen that every object is instantiated by default to null. So how about if I want an account balance here? I want to add another instance variable here. Or even before we go into that, there is something else I remember I need to add before going further. So um, I've introduced the scanner class in the previous video I made. So here, instead of encoding the account name here, what if I prompt the user to enter his account name? So for example, so let's say we have something like, so I would want to prompt the user, say enter your account name. Okay, so in this case I'll just say string, for example, the account name. Okay, oh, before that I forgot, I need to create a scanner. Okay, so this scanner is also another inbuilt class, so it serves as a data type here. So the variable name scanner equals new scanner. Okay, so you can see now that we are instantiating an object of that scanner class, and then it also requires arguments to the parameter. So the argument will be system dot in. So and then we are good to go. So the account name here would now be scanner dot scanner dot what? Scanner dot next line. Okay. So if I'm going to instantiate the next line, I'll just call okay, let me create another account of this account equals new account. So you can see that it requires this as well, another parameter, right? I'll just pass in the account name. So once this is done, I can just say uh, this account dot display message to produce this. So let's try it out now. So I expect that it would return this first two, and then the next time it would ask me to prompt to create an account. So let's do this. Uh, oh, there is an error here. Line 3. Okay, let me remove this. There's a mistake there. So I'm going to run it again. So the first two instances we created have actually worked. Then the next thing I would like to do here is it says enter your account name. So let's say I am Lionel Messi. So you can see that it says we have successfully created an account. So with this now, we have some of the groundwork to continue creating more account objects and then so on like that. So the next thing we are going to be doing in the next video is to add more methods here. Okay, we are going to be adding more methods here. And then when we do so, when we add more methods, so we want to be looking at uh, how we can we want to be looking at how we can create an account balance because that's one of the most important things in the bank account. We want to create an account balance. We want to be able to deposit into the account. We also want to be able to debit the account as well. So we are going to be looking at how we can do that in our next class. So I hope that the concepts explained there are clear. And if there are any questions, feel free to drop them into in the chat, and I would definitely attend to them. Thanks for watching, and see you again in the next class.